What's up, guys? It's your boy, the Chat Kid, coming back at you with Jeff the Killer Part 2, with Jeff the Killer Scars of Corruption Part 2. In the first part, Nancy started crying because of the book that her son, Lane, took into school, and it was about Jeff the Killer and how he broke up their marriage. Alright, no time to waste, let's go. He'd returned to his bedroom and took to the internet to voice his rage instead. He logged onto his Facebook profile and began a long rant about censorship, freedom of speech, corruption, and the hypocritical world that he was forced to exist within. He went into vivid detail about Lou Wood's book, and how Jeff the Killer was the only thing that put Mandeville, LA on the map, about how his teacher was simply afraid of the truth, and so on it went. After Lane Dermott felt that his work in the field of exposing social injustice was done for the day, he collapsed on his bed and dozed off, still brooding over the unfair nature of life. Several hours later, he was awoken by a commotion from outside his bedroom. The faded light coming in from the window told Lane that it was late in the evening. There was suddenly a loud crash, followed by what he thought just might be soft cries. The whimpering tone sounded as if it belonged to his mother. Lane stood from his bed and placed his ear to the door. He was now certain that the voice belonged to his mother. At first he didn't react. Over the years since her husband left, she'd fallen into bouts of depression, and it was not too uncommon to hear her suddenly begin to cry with no apparent provocation. The crashing sound, though, that was something new. It had been too loud to just be a simple plate falling and shattering or a picture dropping off the wall. Slowly, Lane cracked open the bedroom door and now heard his mother better. She wasn't just softly crying, but rather sounded as if she was begging. Please don't hurt us. Please just leave. Lane looked around his room for something, anything that he could use to defend himself. However, it had gotten dark outside and he didn't want to risk turning on his bedroom light and alerting whoever was terrifying his mother that he was back there. He didn't have a cellular phone or a landline in his bedroom, and there was nothing immediately visible to use for self-defense. His only options were to stay hidden or go out and see what was happening. He could have lightly stood in that doorway and debated this all night, but suddenly his mother screamed, raising her voice from the sheepish tone she'd been uttering her pleas to full sound of terror and panic. No! Please no! The voice of Nancy carried back to Lane. Lane exited his bedroom and stepped into the darkening hallway of his home. What little light still came through the windows was that of dull orange that only late twilight could produce. The house was small, and within a few steps he knew that he'd be able to see the living room. Still looking around for any means of self-defense, Lane's eyes fell on the small wooden stand that sat in the hallway of their home. Their phone that was never used for a phone, since the only jack was located in the living room, contained a small shelf underneath its base, something his mother would keep her few sewing instruments in there. He knew there were needles and thread, but what he now prayed for was her sharp sewing shears. They sprung to mind because Lane was told from the time he was a small child that they were dangerous, sharp as knives. Every time he touched them, as far as he could recall, Nancy felt it was her duty to remind him to be careful. As silently as possible, Lane opened the drawer, feeling a degree of gratitude at how silently this shelf glided out. Looking down, he saw the long scissors that were in fact in the drawer. Being careful not to make a sound, he drew them out and, with a shaky sigh of nerves, once more began to move towards the sound of his mother's begging. Lane slowly peeked into the bedroom, his eyes growing enormous and his heart freezing in place at the sight before him. His mother, cowering on the sofa, pushed back as far into the backrest as anyone could, was holding up her hands in a pleading gesture. She was crying loudly. The sight alone thought it was not what pulled Lane from his former state of cautious fear into a new state of crippling panic. He'd seen his mother break down crying many times, especially during the first year that his father left. No, it was the source of her current horror that froze Lane in his tracks. It stood close to 6 feet tall, dressed in ragged clothing with long, filthy hair, partially hiding one side of his face, and a long kitchen knife gripped in its hand. His head was tilting back and forth, almost as though it was some curious animal trying to figure out the best place to strike his prey first. It would change position before the sofa every few seconds, as though attempting to further torment Nancy, keep her unsure of when and where it would strike. Lane risked another step closer, and suddenly the ghoulish intruder looked up at him. It was at the moment that Lane found himself trapped deeply in between disbelief and amazement. The face staring at him from across the living room was far too iconic to mistake. For one side, an almost sane eye locked in, a smile formed as it realised it had Lane trapped in fear. The other side of its face, though, that was something perhaps drawn from the tapestries of hell. The eye was nothing more than a milky white bulb. Lane felt that this was the eyes of some monstrous creature might develop, should it spend its life swimming in the pits of the Mariana Trench. From the mouth to the eye there was a long, healed yet still quite pronounced scar. The scar stopped briefly at the blank eye, but began to move up the eyebrow, travelling further up the forehead and onto the scalp. Lane slowly raised the scissors to chest level, now gripping them with both hands. Understandably, Lane could not overcome the pure shock of finding one of the decade's most infamous killers standing in his living room. From Chapter 7, Denial and Truth, The Fate of My Brother. What used to keep me up at night most often, what caused me the most regret and pain, was the fact that I slept through Jeff's farewell. I only vaguely remember it now, my brother waking me up, telling me that I was free now. I remember feeling annoyed because, well, who enjoys being woken up in the middle of the night? I remember he told me that he loved me and that he was his best friend. I remember saying something like, "Love you too, let me go back to sleep," or something to that effect. When I woke up the next morning, I got up and started my normal routine. It wasn't until I was walking downstairs towards the kitchen that I realised the house was too quiet. Our mother always had the television on in the living room during the day. It was almost 10 AM and the house was silent. It would be still for another hour before I decided to open my parents' bedroom door. The rest of that week is still a blur in my mind. I remember the police arrived and my parents being taken out wrapped in white sheets. I was sure that Jeff had been kidnapped by whoever murdered our parents. Of course, I remember him waking me up with his cryptic goodbyes. But when it's your brother, a trusted face you've known for your entire life, it's not exactly easy to apply that person to a murder. However, once the murder of Williamson took place, once the tabloids labelled him Jeff the Killer, well, by then it was pretty much impossible to deny. Once Monica Davenport released the Jeff tapes, well, denial was all I had left. After the murders of Keith and Troy, well, that was it. Months rolled on into years, and pretty soon Jeff was becoming a forgotten entity. By then I'd moved from Louisiana. I had family in Texas, an aunt and uncle. They were very compassionate. They understood what I'd gone through and let me pretty much spend the next year healing. I can still remember sitting up in bed out there in Texas, feeling tears pool in the corner of my eyes. My greatest fear was perhaps Jeff was trying to find me, that he needed help. I pictured him waiting around our very short-lived home in Mandeville, perhaps wondering where I was. Those sort of thoughts kept me up for most of that year. Sometimes a letter would come addressed to me out there in Houston. It would be forwarded from the old address. No return address usually. I would get so excited as I tore it up and convinced that Jeff had found a way to write me, to let me know that he was still alive. When it turned out to be a piece of junk mail, just some advertisement designed to look like a real piece of mail, my heart would sink and I'd feel that regret creeping back in. Regret for not waking up and talking to Jeff on the night that he left. At the very least, I could have told him goodbye. Jeff the Killer, Lane whispered, still holding up the scissors. Jeff looked down at Nancy, his face locked in a twisted mask of insanity, and drove the knife down towards her chest. Go to sleep. Shit! Fuck! Jeff screamed, suddenly releasing the knife and letting it fall to the sofa. Lane looked over and saw that his mother had brought the point of her knee directly into the groin of her attacker. Jeff staggered back against the wall, gripping his crotch whilst trying to still threaten both Nancy and Lane. But the intruder didn't account for that Nancy Dermott spent the majority of her adult life married to a police officer. He dragged her to every self-defense course that he could. For years, the training was drilled into her, always go for the soft parts, the eyes, the testicles, the throat. Jeff suddenly lunged, attempting to dodge around Nancy and grab the knife that he dropped during the initial kick. Lane was still frozen in place. For all the dark poetry and journal entries he'd created, many detailing the ways he liked to exact his revenge on those who didn't appreciate him, mostly girls and teachers. Now they actually had the chance to stab someone, he found that he simply couldn't manage the act. Jeff grabbed for the knife, got one hand around the hilt, but never had the chance to brandish it. At the very moment he awkwardly attempted to rotate the blade, Nancy brought her living room lamp down over the attacker's head. There was a grunt of pain as Jeff fell forward onto the sofa. The lamp shattered. Before Lane could blink, his mother grabbed the next closest weapon, the large crystal ashtray that sat upon their coffee table. He raised the object over her head, and with a scream of rage he smashed it over the young man's head, who moments before had her under what he believed to be complete control. "Oh God, Lane, are you alright?" Nancy shouted at her son. "Yeah, Mum, are you?" Before she could answer, Lane began to move closer towards the unmoving body on the living room sofa. "Stay back, Lane, you might get up. You might get back up." "Mum, I don't think he's getting back up. Look." Lane pointed at the blood pooling beneath the still body on the couch. From the 2016 documentary, Jeff Woods, The Killer Speaks, by Monica Davenport, interview conducted with local Mandeville youth addressing the cultural movement known as Jeff's Killers. Monica Davenport addresses the camera while standing inside a small home that appears to be in rural St. Tammany Parish. Monica: I am here outside the Mandeville, LA, where a group of high school aged kids gather on a regular basis. What might be the purpose of their gathering? Well, they call themselves Jeff's Killers, and they view him as a sort of anti-hero, and many said that they anxiously are waiting for the opportunity to meet him in person. The film cuts to a montage of various teenage participants, many with scars artificially decorated to the side of their faces. Some with contact lenses giving one eye cosmetically enhanced whiteness. All the teens gave short answers, some just one word, others a short phrase, all the same message though. Jeff Woods. We're here to celebrate Jeff the Killer. The Killer! Always Jeffrey Woods. Always. Why'd you come here and celebrate Jeffrey Woods? He's a serial killer. He murdered his parents. How'd you find a hero in that? Jeff is he's showing us the world that he can do something about abuse. So many of us, we've grown up dealing with that stuff, and we can't do that shit. Jeff, though, he did it. Yeah, Jeff Woods, he was a nice guy. He tried so hard to turn the other cheek and all that crap that they teach us in school. He did everything the way we're taught to do it. All the crap society tells us that we're stepping stones to being a normal and happy person. For most of us, it worked out great. You get to be a cheerleader or some crap. You get to march in the Labour Day parade. Woo! Jeff, though, all the lies he tried to tell us to be happy, well, he just snapped and did it his own way. No, forget that shit. Jeff the Killer is fucking rage turned all the way up. People out there, they see us. They see us walking around and we're freaks, or they think that we're weak. But Jeff the Killer showed the fucking world you can only push someone so damn far. So keep pushing us, motherfuckers. Go ahead. Do you all believe that Jeffrey Woods could still be alive? If so, what would you say to me if you had the chance? Various responses are shouted towards the camera. Hang Randy Hayden by the fucking balls. Burn this town down. And you, what would you say to Jeff Woods? I'd say come and hang out with us. Show us how you managed to let go of that shit holding you down all those years ago. We want to be free, just like you. Fucking freaks. The haggard-looking man muttered before dipping a glazed donut into his mug of cheap coffee. Although only in his 40s, Detective Dalton Bradshaw of the Mandeville Police Department looked much older. His hairline had begun to retreat from his forehead a bit more each year. The 2 packs of Pall Mall Reds that he smokes between waking up at dawn and returning home oftentimes well after dark have done nothing to assist in preserving his once chiselled appearance. His teeth are now stained from the tobacco. His face bore wrinkles and his eyes always looked exhausted, regardless of how much sleep he might have enjoyed the night before. He'd been watching various clips from Davenport's documentary while they were sitting at the tiny and disgusting little coffee and donut joint for the better part of 2 hours. He'd actually been back at the police station packing his things to go home for the night when his watch command had summoned him into his office. Apparently, a young man had broken into a residential and attempted to hold one of the occupants at knife point. The woman fought back and the asshole died by his own blade. The woman and her kid were safe as far as Dalton was concerned. This shit could wait until the morning. Let the uniforms of the fucking coroners clear them out and clean the body. This was Mandeville after all, and the most exciting thing ever happened out here, and that was 4 years ago. You see, I probably some meth head from around the backwoods and just got some cash to buy some dope. Then more information came in. That one exciting thing happened 4 years ago in Mandeville. The one thing that could possibly keep Dalton on the clock and not at home, taking off his suit and climbing to a hot shower, just so happened to the one fucking thing that was lying in a pool of its own blood in Nancy Dermott's sofa. This crazy bitch thinks she killed Jeffrey Woods? Dalton asked his watch commander as he grabbed his notebook and slung on his sport coat. That crazy bitch just so happens to be Nancy Dermott, as an ex-wife of Paul Dermott, the same guy that was running favours from Maxwell Hayden. Relax, Captain. I'm going to go over there, going to do a nice little interview, make sure the body gets moved and we can pick this up tomorrow. The hell we can! The captain replied in anger. I'm arranging for a specialist from Baton Rogue to work with you on this. That is an order that came down right from the mayor's office. This guy on the way right now. Just go and stuff donuts in your face like that little shit dive you like. The specialist will meet you there. Uniforms already have the scene under control. If we can move the body to the morgue without causing a scene, we will. I cannot stress this enough to you, Bradshaw. This shit stays on whisper. Wait, how the hell does the mayor's office know about this call already? How? This woman's jackass kid, that's how. Lane Dent has been a pain in the ass for a while. He'd like to post his little opinions about his school and the town all over the freaking official website of the city of Mandeville. The site admins block him from writing all this Jeff Woods crap. They tell him it's a blacklisted subject, but the little shit just goes and makes no accounts and does it all over again. Anyway, whilst his mother was busy calling the cops, her 16-year-old idiot was busy photographing the body and posting a picture of it right there on the town's message board. The admins deleted the post, and we can only pray to God that it did so much before someone else saw it and copied it. The mayor shows how saw it though, and believe me, he's just looking for an ass to kick right now. And he thinks we need some sort of, expert on loonies and window lickers to come there and tell us what a dead freak looks like? I don't care what the mayor thinks, Bradshaw, but a chief of police does. So for right now, please, just go down there, drink a coffee and wait for this guy to show up and meet you there. Then kindly go over to the crime and let his guy help you investigate it. And I can expect to go home when? This captain screamed some harsh words of motivation towards Dalton Bradshaw in response to his question. And finally, the overworked detective plodded out to his car and climbed in. Once off the road, Dalton reached into his glove compartment and removed a small Ziploc bag containing about 8 small pills. Damn, I'm running a bit low, he said to me with a frown, staring at the baggie. The pills are Adderall, although Dalton could not guess at the dosage or age of the pills. One of his on and off again lovers, a woman who would also often ask Dalton to go over and scare her ex-boyfriend paying her overdue child support, had given to him recently. That they were her kids, but apparently the kid didn't like them. Said kid's mum and the occasional even companion of Dalton believed that the detective could use a boost of energy, as, according to her, it looked like reheated shit. He swallowed 2 of the pills, even though he knew he should try and stretch the few he had left far before. For another week or so, but for the time he was more concerned about just staying awake tonight. If some suit from Baton Rogue was coming over to assist, this would not be a short evening, to say the least. Dalton was pleasantly elevated as he sat at the coffee shop, feeling the artificial energy and euphoria from the pills start to gather inside his brain and pulse behind his eyes. I don't know what the hell's wrong with Gina Marie's kid if he doesn't like this shit. He mumbled to himself as he clicked play on the next video from Monica Davenport's documentary. From fourth grade school project. Oh. Who was your hero? By Jeremy Lyman, Crestwood Elementary School, Baton Rouge, LA. My hero is Uncle Sam. Uncle Simon works as a kind of special police officer who tries to arrest criminals who have already gotten away. His job is to study the clues and try to find the bad people, even when no one else can find them. He keeps us safe. I'm gonna go ahead and assume by the beard, stub and bloodshot eyes you're on about Dalton Bradshaw. A voice suddenly spoke behind the detective as he was focusing on Davenport's film. Dalton looks up at the man addressing him. It would be logical that this would be the specialist from Baton Road, but based on his appearance, Dalton had to almost second guess himself. The man standing before him was a lot younger than he was expecting for starters. He expected this guy's age couldn't be older than 30, perhaps even younger. He was skinny, had a small goatee, and was dressed for a date in the mall more than investigating a murder. Do all the special state investigators walk around in jeans and t-shirts these days? Dawn asked without smiling. Sorry dude, my boss has to learn to accept it. I don't do suits unless it's a funeral or a wedding. My name's Simon, by the way, or if you want the official introduction. I'm Agent Simon Lyman of the Unsolved Crimes Department of the Louisiana State Police. Dalton blinked and had to take a moment to compose himself, or else he feared he might laugh in the kid's face. Hold up. My name is Simon Lyman? Why would your folks do that to you? You misunderstood. My parents didn't name me Simon, they actually named me Solomon Lyman. I legally changed my first name to Sam when I was 18. Why the hell would you do that? Duh. So it would rhyme. Dalton found himself chuckling just a bit in spite of how annoyed he was at the ever-increasing lateness of his workday.